Most people believe that shyness is a personality trait. They call it being quiet. They call it being reserved. They treat it like a gentle temperament, a soft corner of the human spectrum. But that's a lie. Shyness isn't a lack of personality. It is an overabundance of internal noise. It is the paralyzing friction between a high-functioning intellect and a low-functioning social filter. You aren't quiet because you have nothing to say. You are quiet because you are saying too much, all at once, inside your own head. The cost of this isn't just a few missed conversations or awkward silences. The cost is much higher. The cost is the shadow life, the version of yourself that is brilliant, witty, and commanding, but only exists in the safety of your own mind. You are a spectator in a world designed for players. And the question isn't how to stop being shy. The question is, how do you stop being a ghost in your own life? Think about the last time you were in a group. Maybe it was a dinner, or a meeting, or just a circle of friends at a bar. You felt the impulse to speak. You felt the perfect line forming in your mind. It was sharp. It was funny. It was exactly what the moment needed. But then, the micro-calculations began. Will they think I'm trying too hard? Is now the right time? Did I misread the tone of the last sentence? By the time you've processed the social variables, the window has closed. The moment has passed. Someone else, someone less thoughtful, someone much louder, has already taken the space. So, you nod. You smile. You play the role of a good listener. And as you sit there, watching them, you feel that familiar, stinging disconnect. You are physically present, but psychologically, you are miles away, trapped in a loop of post-event autopsy, replaying what you should have said for the next 3 hours. You recognize that feeling. It's not just nervousness. It's a siege. We have been conditioned to view shyness as a vulnerability to be pitted. We treat it like a social handicap. But if we look at the mechanics of behavior, a darker truth emerges. Shyness is often a sophisticated, albeit maladaptive, form of control. You are attempting to control the environment by refusing to interact with it. If you don't speak, you can't be judged. If you don't reveal your hand, you can't be defeated. It is a defensive fortress built out of silence. But here is the paradox. In your attempt to protect your ego from the risk of rejection, you are guaranteeing the certainty of being overlooked. You aren't avoiding judgment, you are avoiding influence. And in the hierarchy of human social structures, the person who cannot influence is the person who is controlled. I spent years studying this exact mechanism. And if I'm being honest, I lived it. I used to view my silence as my greatest strength. I thought, while they are talking nonsense, I am observing. I am gathering data. I am the smartest person in the room because I am the most perceptive. I felt superior in my solitude. But I was wrong. Perception without action is just voyeurism. There is no power in being a witness to a life you aren't actually participating in. I realized that my observation wasn't a strategic advantage, it was a hiding place. To move from being a victim of shyness to an operator of presence, you have to understand the 3 laws of social agency. Law I.e. the observer's trap. The shy individual tends to overcollect data and underapply it. You analyze micro-expressions, tone, and subtext, but you treat this information like a museum exhibit rather than a weapon. The application: stop trying to read the room perfectly. A perfect read is a myth. Instead, aim for a functional read. Information is only useful if it prompts a move. If you see an opening, take it, even if the data is only 70% complete. Law 2, the invisibility tax. In any social or professional hierarchy, there is a tax on the unseen. If you do not project a signal, the world will assign you one by default. They will label you as passive, uninterested, or subservient. The application: you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to avoid this tax. You simply need to establish signal presence. This means controlled eye contact, intentional body language, and the ability to hold space through stillness rather than retreating from it. Law 3, the pivot from defense to strategy. Shyness is a defensive posture. Strategy is an offensive one. The application: shift your goal. Stop asking, "How do I avoid looking stupid?" That is a defensive question. Start asking, "What value can I add to this interaction?" When your focus shifts from protecting your ego to managing the room, the anxiety loses its grip. Anxiety is a byproduct of self-consciousness. Strategy is the antidote to self-consciousness. The world does not reward the most intelligent person in the room. It rewards the person who can communicate their intelligence effectively. If you stay in the shadows, your brilliance becomes a secret. And secrets don't build empires. They don't build connections. They don't build lives. The silence you use as a shield is slowly becoming your cage. But the cage is unlocked. The same mind that creates the noise of shyness is the same mind that can master the art of strategic silence. The goal isn't to become an extrovert. That would be a lie. The goal is to become a controlled operator, someone who speaks not because they must fill the silence, but because they have something that demands to be heard. You can continue to be the most interesting person no one ever meets. Or, you can decide that the cost of being seen is worth the price of being known. The choice is yours. But the window is closing. You've heard the 3 laws. You understand the mechanics. But understanding is not transformation. Knowledge without execution is just intellectual decoration. You can memorize every principle of influence, every law of power, every framework of human psychology, and still walk into a room and say nothing. Why? Because shyness isn't a knowledge problem. It's an identity problem. And that distinction changes everything. Here's what most people assume: shy people lack confidence. It makes sense on the surface. They don't speak up. They avoid confrontation. They fade into the background. Surely, this is a confidence deficit. But watch closely. Put a shy person in a room where they feel competent. Maybe it's their area of expertise, their creative domain, their private space, and something shifts. Suddenly, they are articulate, commanding, almost unrecognizable. So, the question isn't whether they have confidence. The question is why they can't access it consistently. The answer is uncomfortable. It's not that shy people lack confidence. It's that they have placed their confidence in the wrong location. They have externalized their sense of self. Their internal stability is hostage to external validation. Every room, every conversation, every interaction becomes a referendum on their worth. And when your identity is up for vote every time you open your mouth, silence becomes the safest ballot. Think about how this plays out in the real world. You're in a meeting. Your manager asks for input. You have an idea, a good one. But instead of speaking, you scan the room. You read the faces. You calculate the risk. What if someone already thought of this? What if it sounds obvious? What if I stumble over my words? By the time you've finished the internal trial, someone else has spoken. Your idea, or a worse version of it, is now credited to them. You tell yourself, next time. But next time, the same algorithm runs. The same hesitation. The same silence. This isn't a single event. This is a pattern. And patterns, left unchecked, become prisons. Now, think about the person who did speak. Were they smarter? Probably not. Were they more prepared? Unlikely. Were they more certain their idea was correct? Almost certainly not. The difference is simple: they had placed their confidence internally. Their sense of self wasn't contingent on the room's approval. They spoke because they decided their voice had value, or not because the room had pre-approved it. That is the shift. Now, here's where most advice fails. They tell you to fake it till you make it. To just put yourself out there. To stop caring what people think. This is useless. You cannot simply decide to stop caring. The machinery of social anxiety is too deeply wired. It's been reinforced by years of pattern recognition, emotional memory, and survival instinct. But you can relocate the source of your confidence. You can stop asking, will they accept me, and start asking, do I accept myself in this moment? This is not affirmation nonsense. This is a strategic reframe. When your stability is internal, the room's reaction becomes data, not judgment. You can observe feedback without being destabilized by it. You can adjust without collapsing. This is the difference between being reactive and being responsive. Reactive, the room controls you. Responsive, you control your relationship with the room. And that shift, that subtle, internal pivot, is the foundation of presence. Let's talk about what happens when you make this shift. People start to perceive you differently. Not because you've become louder. Not because you've suddenly transformed into an extrovert. But because your energy has changed. There is a quiet authority that comes from internal stability. When you are not constantly seeking approval, you stop leaking desperation. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for your presence. And paradoxically, this makes people more interested in what you have to say. Scarcity creates value. When you speak less but with intention, your words carry more weight. When you hold space without fidgeting, without nervous laughter, without filling every silence, you project control. This is the dark truth no one tells shy people: your silence, properly deployed, is a weapon. But only if it's chosen. Not if it's compelled. The difference between a person who is strategically silent and a person who is paralyzed by shyness is entirely internal. From the outside, they may look identical. But one is in control. The other is controlled. Which one are you? Most people will never make this shift. They will spend their entire lives believing that shyness is simply who they are. They will treat it as an immutable trait, like height or eye color. They will build their entire identity around it, never realizing that identity is not fixed. It is negotiated. Daily. With every choice. Every time you choose silence out of fear, you reinforce the architecture of invisibility. Every time you speak, even imperfectly, even awkwardly, you destabilize that architecture. The goal is not to become someone else. The goal is to stop being a hostage to a version of yourself that was constructed by fear. But here's the part no one warns you about. When you start showing up differently, not everyone will welcome it. Some people have grown comfortable with your silence. They've built their own sense of importance around your invisibility. When you begin to take up space, they will push back. This is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're disrupting a system that benefited from your absence. Let them adjust. Shyness is not a personality. It is a negotiation you lost before you knew the terms. The world doesn't respond to who you are. It responds to who you project. And projection is a skill, not a gift. Most people will never learn this. They will mistake their internal experience for external reality. They will assume that because they feel they are unseen. But there are layers beneath this pattern. Layers you haven't accessed yet. Mechanisms you haven't uncovered. If you're still watching, it means something in this reached you. That's not an accident. Subscribe. The patterns run deeper than this. In your last 3 social interactions, did you speak because you had something to say, or did you stay silent because you were waiting for permission that never came? Share it in the comments.